Sometimes we need to carry stuff on our bikes, and I've tried just about everything from backpacks, messenger bags, big and small, fanny packs, frame bags, a rear rack with panniers, but by far my favorite way to carry stuff on my bike for daily use, for even bigger use, is the front rack. Here is a case for front racks. The front rack, in my experience, has been the best way to carry the ride essentials. And for me, the ride essentials is 2 locks and tools to fix whatever may happen. Like, it's just so easy to pack it in and make sure that it's secure. Even this little walled 137 basket, it's a half basket on top of my Simworks bento rack on my Wabi Special, comfortably fits everything, and I even have room left over for snacks. And then on my other bike, my Wabi Thunder, which is a more capable bike. This is the bike that I use if I want to do something, if I want to like go grocery shopping or go touring. I haven't toured on it yet, but that would be sick. And I'm using a Velo Orange Portour rack paired with a PDW Zigzag large basket, which is just huge. It can fit a week's worth of groceries for 2 people in this thing. It's pretty sick. This basket is actually so ginormous that when I was riding with my friend Hao, who's the owner of Faith Gear in Taiwan, he was riding my All City Nature Boy, which just has a regular walled 137 basket on it. It's single speed. He grabbed the front brake. He's used to riding brakeless. He crashed, he went over the handlebars, and the basket on that bike completely just snapped off. It was repairable, but we had to take it home. And to do that, I just threw it in my basket and secured it with this very large, I need to zoom out, it's so big, PDW loot bag. And the thing with front racks is they come in different shapes, sizes, and weights, so that you can find one that's ideal for your bike and the type of riding that you'll do. My preference for the front rack is to use it with a basket on top because it just balances like packability. It increases the storage capacity. It doesn't add all that much weight, and it still looks nice, so it just ticks all the boxes for me for just carrying stuff on my bike and making it as easy and as practical while still looking good as possible. And a lot of fixed gear riders prefer to ride with a messenger bag, big or small, for a couple of reasons. Number 1, it looks cool, which is probably the most important reason, but number 2, a lot of fixed gear bikes don't come with mounts. And number 3, it allows you to carry your stuff while still maintaining control over the rear of your bike, which is super important for brakeless fixed gear riding. But if you've ever ridden more than like 10 minutes in anything but the coldest, mildest weather on planet Earth with a backpack or a messenger bag, you know that your back gets sweaty, it gets nasty, and everything just pools on your back and your shirt absorbs it, and it's not fun. And that to me is the greatest advantage of riding your bike with a front rack, is that you can get your weight off of your back. Everything that's in your bag, you just throw it into your front rack and you're good to go. You don't have a bag on your back that's basically a big blanket making everything hot and sweaty and sticky and swampy. Now that your back is actually free, your body can sweat and your sweat can actually evaporate. And when putting weight on the bike instead of the rider, that means you don't have to deal with sore shoulders and a sore back after long days of carrying stuff in the saddle. Your bike is bearing the weight, not you. You and I, we're the engine of the bike, and the more comfortable that we can make the engine, the better we'll be able to perform and the more fun we're going to have. And that's what biking is all about. I also find that riding with a front rack is really stable and confidence inspiring, which is super important if you're riding fixed gear or single speed, and even doubly important if you're riding brakeless, which I am. Because in the past, I have ridden with a rear rack and panniers, and when I filled up the panniers, it would really swing the back of the bike and it would be hard to get up or down hills or turn or ride the bike. It was kind of sketchy and it made me not want to fill it up, which defeats the whole purpose of having a rack and panniers. But with the front rack, you're keeping everything under control because your load is connected to your point of steering, your fork. And you don't have that tail wagging the dog effect. And for fixed gear riders, especially if you're riding brakelets, it's super important to have control over the rear of your bike so that you can whip and skid and just generally stop. And have control over your bike and be more confident and ride not safely, but reasonably dangerously. Front racks are also super easy to pack and unpack, especially if you have a basket attached to the top of it. It takes me maybe like, I don't know, 15 seconds to pack or unpack everything in my front rack that I need for a ride. It's just a big container. There's no worrying about if stuff is going to fit in specific compartments or pockets or what you're going to do with your stuff after you lock up your bike, which is a problem that I had with frame bags. I just didn't want to use them for commuting because I didn't want people snooping through my bags. But it's like with this, I could just throw everything into another bag if I really wanted to, and then pack that into my basket and take it with me if I was going to be locking up. You just don't really have to think much about how you're going to pack this thing. If it fits in, it's good. Like, I'm using a cargo net which secures everything pretty well. I have used this half basket to get an entire bag full of groceries, and that's just it. It's secure. It's not going anywhere. I personally don't like it when bags have so many compartments, whether it's a frame bag or a backpack, messenger bag, that I forget where I even put my stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I put my wallet in the secret back compartment behind the back stiffener. It's like, I'm not trying to get lost in my own bag. I'm just trying to take my stuff from point A to point B. And I've found that a front rack with a basket on top is an A+ way to do that. Another benefit is that your stuff is right underneath your nose when you are riding. This allows you to take stuff out or put stuff in when you're on the bike without ever having to pull over. So if you want to grab a snack, you just pull that out. You eat it. You be on your merry way. If you started off in a chilly morning and it's starting to heat up, you just take off your jacket, shove it in. You don't ever have to get off the bike if you are dexterous enough. Or if you just have more important things that you want to keep your eye on, your valuables, your wallet, your keys, your phone, your camera, that can all be right underneath you and give you that peace of mind. You can see it, you don't have to worry about it. I also think front racks and a basket on top look really sick. In my eyes, they look better than any other way to carry stuff on your bike, which is super important if you want Fixie points. And speaking of Fixie points, we have the world's first NJS stamped bracelet available for sale right now at zachy.com/merch. But there are some things to consider before you stick a front rack on your bike and potentially change the way that you ride your bike forever. Bad bike racks really suck. Like, you would borderline be better off with no rack than with a bad bike rack. They can be dangerous. I mean, I should just stop there, but they also just suck to use. And good bike racks are pretty expensive. A lot of labor and care goes into building a quality bike rack. One that will be useful, one that will be strong, one that will be stiff, one that will be reliable and not completely ruin the way your bike rides or put you 6 feet under the ground. So this is the SimWorks Obento front rack that's made by Nitto. The really cool thing about this one is that it just attaches with P-clamps. My Wabi Special doesn't have any eyelets. P-clamps, good to go. It costs $200. That's a lot of freaking money for just something that holds stuff onto your bike. And then I have the Velo Orange Portour rack on my Wabi Thunder. Also, super nice rack. Super sturdy, super reliable. That's $165. And then you add in the cost of the basket, which can range anywhere from like $20 to $50. You're putting a lot of parts on your bike. And then also, not every bike can take a front rack. Most front racks on the market require eyelets on your fork so that they can attach to your fork. There are some other types like my SimWorks Obento front rack that attaches with P-clamps. Even then, if your fork blades are too aerodynamic and too thick, P-clamps may not work for your fork. And even then, if you have a carbon fork, you might not exactly want to use a front rack unless it's specifically rated to take on loads at that weight and that angle, unless, you know, your mileage may vary. You're an adult, you make your own decisions. Personally, I wouldn't put a front rack on a carbon fork unless it was specifically rated to do so. And then there's the clearance issue, depending on your handlebars. Of course, front racks will work wonderfully with alt bars or riser bars if they don't really interfere with this region. But if you're using drop bars, you're going to have to get something probably significantly wider, depending on what's on your bike. And right now with this big basket, I have 66 centimeter wide crust towel rack bars. And as far as I know, these are one of the widest, if not the widest, drop bar on the market. But also you might want to even consider getting a wider handlebar to give you more leverage and control over your front load so that your bike isn't getting too squirrely and too floppy and sending you into a ditch when you accidentally turn and then your wheel flops. And then on my Wabi Special, it has 48 centimeter Nitto noodles to fit the walled 137 basket in between to have enough clearance for fingers. And something else to consider is that if you do end up getting wider drop bars, you might have to get a shorter stem because geometry, this is longer than this. Well, hypotenuse, but there's not really any way around it. There's only ways to mitigate it. More weight on the front of your bike is just going to make it floppier. The wheel flop or floppiness is the tendency for your bike to want to accelerate on its own and feel like it's steering on its own. Putting weight on the front of your bike will slow down the steering of your bike. It won't feel as nimble, quick, and responsive compared to if it didn't have a rack at all. And it will take more force to turn your bike the same angle. I got used to it within a week of riding, even with this giant basket. Your mileage may vary. I don't think it's a big deal, but it is a cost that you have to pay if you want all this utility that comes with a front rack. And also, if you're a weight weenie, obviously don't bother. I can put my script in my front rack. I love front racks so much that I honestly find it hard to imagine a world where I go back to willingly riding a bike without a front rack. Just because I prefer to have at least some bare minimum form of locks and tools whenever I ride my bike, wherever I'm going. To me, riding a bike without a front rack is like driving a car that doesn't have a trunk. It's like, yeah, you can get from point A to point B, but there's not much else you can do when you get there. And the front rack makes riding my bikes so much more comfortable, where I don't have a public pool's worth of sweat accumulating on my back and soaking into my shirt. Even if I'm just carrying the bare minimum essentials of just tools, lights, locks, maybe some snacks and water, I could just dump it all into my front rack and be on my merry way without having to think about it. Front racks have changed the way I ride my bike forever. Just like this message from our sponsor, Wabi Cycles. Whether it's ideas or bikes, time will separate the good from the best. And today's video's sponsor, Wabi Cycles, has been making the same fixed gears since 2009. I have two bikes, a Wabi Special and now a Wabi Thunder. I only care to own Wabis because they're just the most fun bikes I've ever ridden. Constructed out of lightweight Reynolds 725 tubing from the UK or Columbus Spirit tubing from Italy. That's like that top tier Columbus tubing. Wabi's fixed gear and single speed bikes are responsive, lively, and solidly built. Wabi allows you to customize the fine details of your bike from handlebar choice to gearing to stem length, so you can have a bike that is super dialed in right out of the box. If you have any questions about Wabis, don't ask me. Fun fact, I don't work for Wabi. Wabi is actually a real brick and mortar bike shop located in Denver, Colorado. You could email them, you could call them, you could drop them a message on Instagram, and they'll be happy to help you with whatever questions that you have and get you on a bike that you love. If you're interested, be sure to check out Wabi Cycles, linked in the description. And Fixie famous shoutouts to David K, Salvador Lombroso, Julian Corona, Brandon Black, Brent David, Mario Perez, Ted Onchi, and Bracelet for helping to make these Fixie videos possible through their support on Patreon. And remember that life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous.